Hey everybody, welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. Here we go again. This is the live stream that I do a couple of times weekly where we talk about job search and recruitment and selection, that kind of thing. Anything to do with careers, anything to do with networking, all that kind of stuff, promotion. It's all good. It's all part of the same part and parcel. And instead of talking about the theory of how this stuff should be done, we talk about the gritty reality of how it's actually done in the real world and what people's experiences have been, complete with ghosting, complete with fake jobs, complete with incompetent recruiters, you name it. That's what we're here to talk about. So this is an interactive live stream. So if you're seeing my beautiful face, you should also see a chat box somewhere nearby. Get in the chat box. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to answer your question. Yes, the title of today's episode, this is episode number 74 of Honest HR Nitrous, is Why Aren't You Getting Hired? Live job search Q&A. So that's what we're here to do. So I don't have an agenda. I don't have a pre-planned monologue about what to talk about. I'm here simply responding to your questions. So get in the chat and give me some questions and let's talk about this stuff. Job search sucks. It's unfortunate. It's usually something that people do out of necessity. And it also happens to be one of the low points in people's lives where your self-esteem and self-confidence are at their lowest, yet it's where you experience the most rejection and where you have to appear the most competent and confident too, I should say. So yes, it's all good. Yeah, get in the chat. Let me know. Special thanks goes out to my YouTube channel members. Right there. My Patreons, my super thanks donors, and of course, my participants. That means you. Thank you for being here. Let's talk about it. You know, why aren't you getting hired? Depending on how far you get in this process, the problem might be at different stages. So, for example, if you are not even finding jobs that you're qualified for, that are in your industry or whatever, that's one problem right there. If you're finding jobs, you're applying to them, but you're not getting any interviews, then that's another problem right there. It suggests that the issue is with your job application. If you are getting interviews, but you are not getting any offers, that suggests the problem is with your interviewing technique. And then if you're getting offers, but their offers are being rescinded, that suggests that the problem, if there is one, might be with your negotiation technique. So there's different kind of phases to this. And of course, if you're not even applying for jobs, but you're doing jobs in the world of networking, tapping the hidden job market, which is like usually far more successful, there's some issues with that too, what you might be doing wrong there. So we're here to talk about all that stuff. Get in the chat and give me some questions because I'm just here talking off the top of my head, waiting to answer your questions. Yes. And while this is coming up, let's see what people said in the poll that I put up this morning. I'm just going to pull that up because I like the polls. I like doing different things with polls. Sometimes they're just, I'm just going for humor, such as it is. Other times it's revealing something kind of fundamental that I want people to get. I'm trying to sort of have people learn something as they complete the poll question. Like, for example, this one, let's see if I can make this bigger and share my screen here. Let's see. Right here. Let's see if I can make this even bigger. So if I didn't get offered the job, it's most likely because others interviewed better than me. It's most likely because it's random. The odds are well below 50% from all jobs. Others are more qualified than me, or I'm doing something wrong. Now, technically, it could be all of these, right? Like any or all. They all could apply. but chances are it's this one. I'm glad that this one got the most votes, because that's actually the reality. If you're experiencing this, that's usually the cause. It's just random. Job interviews, unfortunately, in the grand scheme of things, they're about the employer, not about you. You basically do the same interview, more or less, wherever you interview. You're the same person with the same resume, the same skills, the same experiences. You go one place, they don't think that's particularly good. You go to another place, they think you're awesome and they hire you. It's not that you've changed, it's just that you just happen to be what certain employers are looking for, and you just happen to be what certain other employers are just not looking for. That's the reality of this. Andrew is here. Andrew wins the prize for the first person in the chat today. So congratulations, Andrew. It was hard fought, but you came through in the end. Andrew says, I've applied a lot of times, and when I finished Zoom interviews for assessments, they picked someone else and I didn't get to round 2 interviews. I've had a friend ask me to email my CV. I didn't get a response. Okay, so your first kind of comment there, you finished the Zoom interview and you did the assessment and you didn't get to the round 2 interviews. Yeah, well, listen, the thing is, what a lot of young people do and people that are new to this process is they go away, and it's understandable. They kind of beat themselves up inside over this. They think like, oh, I'm no good. I need to have done better. This is a failing of mine. And the reality is that it isn't. It just happens to be what that particular employer was looking for, right? What I'd be interested to see is, of all the people that they select with this method, do those people end up working out or not? Because a lot of times they're not. The odds are that they are not, because employee retention rates, have continued their downward trend, which means that employees are staying for less and less time working for a particular employer on average. And, they're trying to combat this process by making the application process, the selection process, more rigorous. And so far, it's not working. All these fancier, more in-depth ways of assessing people across the board, they're not producing the numbers that show that they're successful. If they did find the right employees, that ended up working out better and staying longer, we're not seeing that yet. Now, that may change in the future, but this trend, which has been going downhill since the 1960s at least, is continuing. So they can try all they like. It's not helping. It's not solving the main problem, which, I strongly suspect none of these tactics are going to solve the problem, because they're all substitutes for getting to know the candidates. They're trying to get to know you without getting to know you, trying to see your worth without actually seeing your worth, Andrew says, it was a store I frequent right behind my home. The funny thing is, the person was rude, but I apparently wasn't picked. Yeah, that's never happened before. I mean, how many times have you encountered a rude recruiter, or a rude hiring manager? Almost never, right? I'm sure, very rare in this world, right? Do you get a rude recruiter or a rude hiring manager? It seems like this is the default way of acting towards people, certainly these days. We're getting worse in that department, But what's interesting is that, getting a job is it's the sales process, right? As a candidate going to interviews, you are, unfortunately, I hate to say this, you are participating in the sales process. You're selling yourself. You're basically saying, to them, you need to forget about all the other candidates you're talking to and hire me, and here's why, right? It's a sales process. You're trying to make a good impression and basically persuade them that they should take a chance on you. You have the highest likelihood of working out, right? You know what I mean? And almost nowhere else in any kind of legitimate sales operation are people rude to the customer or to each other, to the other party. You know what I mean? It's only the level of amateurism that we get in recruitment and selection where they think that, okay, we can engage in the sales process but be rude at the same time. It's like, how well does that go over? Not very. So it's usually an obvious sign of a bad company that the person is so arrogant that they think, I can approach people and be a jackass and they'll still want to work for me. It's just stupid. These people are usually very unaware. I've met a lot of people like that in my career, and pretty much every single one of them, they're living in a bubble. They're living in a bubble where they think they don't need to be, decent and behave like a proper human being, and they'll still be successful despite that. And the problem is they're seeing what they believe instead of the other way around. They're seeing that, oh yeah, I'm still getting people to work for me. It's like, yeah, you are. You're getting people to work for you that leave the moment that something better comes along because they hate you, and you're treating them like crap. They're not going to be there for very long. And the ones that do are the real psychopaths. You know what I mean? So but they don't see any of this, right? Andrew says, the person who was hired was also very funny. When I was assessed, the questions asked, the employee didn't actually do what the assessment said they should do. Yeah, so it's obviously a flawed process with flawed people. And that never happens either, right? We've never seen that before in the world of hiring, right? It's always above board and it's always held to very high standards, right? So yeah, Andrew, I can believe it. I can believe it. There's nothing there that I'd be surprised at. That kind of stuff happens every day. It's just, that's what happens when you put idiots in charge, They do a crappy job and they break their own rules and they do whatever they want anyway. And, they get some results, right? They're usually not happy with the results, but they don't seem to mind. So whatever, That's another reason I try to push people in the direction of the hidden job market, because when you're doing networking, when you're doing things like direct outreach, you can spot this, right? First of all, the people that are not into it usually won't respond. So you sort of automatically filter them out. The only people that you end up meeting with are the ones that want to meet with you, You know what I'm saying? That's the difference between that situation and a job interview. Job interview, you get people that on both sides, you get candidates and employers. They're just not interested in meeting with the other person. They don't like people, but yet they're involved in this. In the in the world of informational interviews and things like this, it's like you're meeting with people that want to talk to you, that invite you in. You didn't come down because you're pushing anything on them or because you're coming cap in hand, on your knees begging for a job. You're there because they've invited you in, and that's how they treat you, like any other business meeting with any other person, from outside the company, right? You invite them in and you talk to them about a certain thing and then they go, So that it filters a lot of that crap and those bad employers out. That's one thing I like about it. I mean, I've done a couple of awkward informational interviews with CEOs, really arrogant CEO types that, it wasn't as bad as some of the job interviews I've been to, in my earlier part of my career. I've had a couple of awkward informational interviews that just did not work well, and then I kind of ended it early. But that's the worst part. It was nowhere near some of the offensive job interviews that I'd been to when I was younger, where, you go as a candidate and you're talking to some C-level person or whatever, as a hiring manager or something. I remember one guy in particular, some chief operating officer, asking you these extremely rude questions and things like, what makes you think you're qualified, but like add a couple of expletives and, say it in a really aggressive kind of way, in a really pompous kind of way, and then just like making a bunch of personal comments about you and asking you stupid questions like that are just out to lunch. And, I remember getting like angry and trying to suppress that, you know what I mean? And then you walk out of there and you're going like, what the hell was that? What was the point of that? You feel bad because you didn't get the job, but then you're like, you feel bad much worse because you encountered some jackass. You know what I'm saying? It almost feels like they're kicking you and you're down, So I sympathize with a lot of people that got to deal with that kind of treatment. Andrew says, it's hard to get through. I wish I had people who could get me into that type of job market. Are you talking about what I was saying, like the hidden job market? You can do it. It's a hell of a lot simpler than you actually think. If you want to see what that looks like, as I've said many times before, there's a link in the description box of this live stream. I put a couple of resources in there. One is called Hidden Job Market. The other one is called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay, so they're linking to 2 videos of mine on my YouTube channel. So check those out if you want to see if you're curious about that stuff, But one way or another, like I recommend everyone to learn about it. It's just better for you every way you slice it, Developing social skills, realizing that successfully talking to people and making things happen is not based on like natural traits of yours. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you can speak English or whatever language you speak, you can do this. It's just a question of knowing who to talk to, what to say, and like how to say it. It's really not that hard. It's really not like this magical thing that only few can achieve. It's just that a lot of people, if you've never been introduced to this, and God knows why they don't ever teach this in high school. It just bugs me. Like you have the right to talk to any other human being, And thanks to resources like Google Maps and LinkedIn, you can find any other human being. You can contact any other human being, send them a message. Now, some people are not on LinkedIn. Some people are on LinkedIn, but they don't respond. Or they're on email, but they don't really respond, that kind of thing. But you can say whatever you want. And it's really not that hard to send a message to someone that they'll probably respond to, But just learning what to say and how to do it, that's all. Anyway, for what it's worth, I put it into that course. If you're wanting to learn that stuff with me, check out that course, okay? Because I put all that stuff in there. I have some free stuff on my YouTube channel, but it's mainly in there. But yeah, developing those social skills, That's how I built up my consulting business. I didn't know anybody. I contacted all the business leaders in my town and met with most of them, and now a lot of them are my clients and stuff. It just learning some basic communication skills, and that's how most people get jobs. People usually, when they get into the mid part of their career, usually they're doing this anyway, right? So that's the deal. So listen, I'm not here to try and push anything on anybody. I'm just saying there's this other world out there. If you're a technical introvert like me, you can do it too. It's just that you have a disadvantage in that maybe you weren't introduced to it already. You haven't been exposed to it, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's actually pretty damn simple. I did it, and I recommend it. So whatever you're looking for, if you're looking just to simply apply to posted jobs, you can make that work, but there's this whole other world out there too. Anyway, get in the chat. There's 27 people here. All I'm here to do is to answer your questions. So get in the chat, give me some questions. What are you wondering about? What are you struggling with? What's happened to you recently that you're confused about, or you don't know how to interpret, or what does it mean? How can you avoid it? That kind of stuff. let me know and I will help you. That's why I do these. I like this one here, this poll. Would you rather speak with a recruiter, a hiring manager, a receptionist, or a clown? And most people said the hiring manager, which is probably good. Most people would rather talk to a hiring manager than a recruiter, and rightly so. But clown got the number 2, so that shows you what the hierarchy is of things here. So there you go. Which one else did we have here? I'm going to do one more, and then we'll get back to questions. When is the best time to send job applications? Wednesday, tomorrow? Yeah, a funny one. The time at which it is most optimal for applications to be sent, or ASAP? The answer, of course, is ASAP. The sooner you get yours in, the more likely you'll get a favorable response. Okay, Vuyo G says, I found your content quite relatable and insightful. Well, thank you very much. It's a compliment of a lifetime. I'm currently navigating a situation where my direct manager may not provide a favorable reference. I'd appreciate any advice on handling such. And you continue, challenges, particularly when applying for internal roles. Okay, so this is with regard to an internal role. Okay. That might be more of a problem if you're trying to get an internal role. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean the kiss of death, but okay, if it was an external role, what I would say was it doesn't matter, really. Most of the time, people put, like, it's almost an unspoken kind of thing. At least it is in North America, and I believe in the EU, but I'm not 100% on that. That, like, if you're currently employed, right, and you're looking to leave, you're looking to get another job, if you send in an application to another employer and they interview you and, you're one of the finalists and they're going to check references, they know not to contact your current employer because you don't want your current employer tipped off that you're thinking of leaving, right? Especially if you say, I don't give you permission to contact my current employer. The best way to have that carry some weight is to not give them the contact information of your current boss and all this kind of thing, right? You don't even give them the information. But you say, like, well, it's because I'm currently working there and I don't want, to tip them off that I'm, like, looking to leave, right? That's well known and a well respected thing generally. So it doesn't matter if your current boss has an issue with you because you wouldn't be using them as a reference anyway. But if it's internal, it can be a little more complicated. Now, what you can do with the internal thing is you could basically say, listen, I work in this department and this person is my boss, okay? And, they're really not okay with the fact that I want to leave. You know what I mean? They hurt. Like, if you tell them, maybe it's a situation where you've told them that you're applying for this job, and you should at some point, if it's an internal thing, even if you say, like, listen, I'm thinking of applying for this, what do you think? So, like, it's not like you're committing to it. It's not like you're telling them you are going to leave. You're just saying, I was thinking of possibly doing this. What are your thoughts, right? Now, if they have any kind of negative reaction, you can say, like, well, okay, I just wanted to get your opinion on that. Okay, fair enough. Now, it's good in a sense that if they had a negative reaction, because then you can say that you could apply anyway. And then you can say, well, my current boss, they see it as a personal betrayal that I'm leaving or that I want to leave. So they're making it like a personal issue. You can maybe take that approach under some circumstances and do it that way. You know what I mean? So that it allows the boss of the department you're hopefully going to, if you get the job, it allows them to say, okay, I understand. They're mad that you're leaving. So therefore, I'm not really going to listen to them when they tell me that you're a bad employee and, they shouldn't hire you and all this. I see. It's all like a personal kind of thing that they've got there. So they can dismiss it. You might be able to get away with that. Okay. But it can be delicate if it's an internal position. You don't know if your current boss and your new boss, if they're heads of departments or whatever, if they like each other, if they communicate with each other. You really don't know what's going on behind the scenes a lot of the time. So does that make sense? Vuyo? Peter says, hi, Bill. What are your thoughts on slightly spicing up the job titles? Senior member to senior member. Also, I followed your resume tips from earlier and I have 2 job interviews next week. Okay, good. Job titles on own resume. Okay. Yeah, listen, look, okay, a job interview and all this, it's not a deposition. Okay, you're not in a court of law. A lot of titles are very flimsy and flexible anyway, Like, for example, the classic example I use is where I worked at one company. What I did, they called it being a frontline manager. Now, you do the same thing at another company, they call it a supervisor. You do the same thing at another company, they call it a lead hand, So it's like, let's say you're hiring for a company that uses the term lead hand, right? And technically, your current job or your previous job, it's say, frontline manager, right? Now, you're applying for the lead hand position. It would be really nice if you could say, well, like, I currently work as a lead hand, So if the roles are, like, it's a judgment call. If the roles are interchangeable, the lingo is interchangeable, I wouldn't judge you if you change on your resume to that company and said, well, I currently work as a lead hand, because that's the terminology that this company uses. That's what they're familiar with, right? Now, later on, if you get to the stage where they check references or something and you're giving them as a reference, if that's what you're doing, you could then say, as an aside, just so you know, my position with them officially is frontline manager. That's what they call it at that company, but it's the lead hand position. That's what I do, something like that, so that, you cover your bases. But, you know what I mean? Like, some of these things are flexible. Now, when you're going from like a manager to a senior manager, or whatever you're saying, member to a senior member, it's like, you got to watch, because then it seems like you're kind of changing the role, the implications of the role. That might be a judgment call on, depending on what industry you're in. You don't want to lie about what position you're in. You don't want to, like, say, oh yeah, I'm the owner or something, when you're like the office boy or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's harmless, it's just like sort of a change of lingo, then I'd say go for it. If it's, if you're trying to sort of make yourself look like you're more senior or whatever than you actually are, then that's maybe crossing the line. So it's a judgment call on how you read these things. Put it this way, if they call you on it, do you feel you can justify yourself? That's kind of the litmus test. Motivation TV says, hello, sir. I'm applying for different jobs in different countries, but every job rejects my resume, but my qualification record is very good. That's an excellent experience. Please, what do I do to get job easily? First of all, it's not going to be easy, okay, necessarily. So there may not be an easy way to get things. Secondly, what you need to learn, if you don't know this already, Motivation TV, is that there's a difference between being qualified for something and being good at being able to sell yourself. One does not mean the other. Some people, especially young people or people that haven't had many jobs in their lives, they think that all they have to do is show up and just say that they're qualified and they'll be offered the job. And that's not how it works. For a start, you've got one job and you've got many applicants. Every single person they bring in for an interview is qualified according to them on paper. It doesn't make any sense to bring someone in for an interview who is not qualified to do the job, because even if you like that person, you still can't hire them. What's the point? So they're bringing in many qualified people. So just being qualified doesn't mean you're going to get offered the job. Far from it, okay? Everyone they talk to is qualified. So they have to pick between several qualified people, right? And it's not always like, oh, well, I'm more qualified than that person. That's not a thing. As far as they're concerned, they're looking for someone that can do the job. Beyond that is unnecessary, being more qualified than what's necessary to do the job. That's just how most employers think, right? So it comes down to other things. It comes down to personality, right? Like, listen, there's a lot of candidates that go for jobs and they're perfectly qualified on paper to do the role. The problem is that they might be arrogant, they might be mean, they might have problems communicating. They think they're being clear, but they're not. The recruiter or hiring manager says something to them, they misinterpret it, get upset, get offended. Now, if that's how a candidate is, the employer does not want to work with that person no matter how qualified they are. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't care if you're a genius. I don't care if you're Albert Einstein. You're insufferable. The last thing I need is to have to work with you every single day of my life. Have to interact with you every day, because every time I interact with you, I feel bad. I either get provoked, I feel upset or frustrated, or you say something kind of sort of passively aggressively offensive to me. It's like, no, deal breaker. I want to work with someone on a daily basis that makes me feel good about myself. It's fun dealing with you. It's easy and enjoyable to deal with you. When I ask you to do something, you say, sure, not a problem. And then you do it right. That's perfect. If you come back to me with 400 questions because you don't understand what I'm saying, sorry, that's a problem. You know what I mean? It has nothing to do with how qualified you are. These are all soft skills. They're all personal traits, right? That's what job interviews are about. They're about who you are as a person. Do you click? Some people are just jerks and they're offensive and they're aggressive and they like dealing with other people who are aggressive and offensive like them. That just clicks. Other people are extremely soft-spoken and very polite, and they want to deal with other people who are very soft-spoken and very polite, It's not a question necessarily of what's right and what's wrong. It's what that person's preferences are, what they're looking for. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how that stuff works. Okay. So it's not simply a matter of just saying, hey, I'm qualified, and then expecting them to offer you the job. It doesn't work like that. Okay. So learn more about that process and about how to give people what they want in a job interview. And that's developing your soft skills, being pleasant, being amiable, having personal charisma. Usually the person they end up liking the best, that's the one that they offer the job to. It's stupid, but it's true. That's usually how this stuff goes down. Guyo V says, thanks so much for your input, Bill. I'm just a bit hesitant to mention my former supervisor, as I want to avoid the impression of being negative or critical. Yeah, you do not want to say anything bad about people. You can mention them. It's, but don't mention anything like, oh, I hate their guts, or we didn't get along, or, just go in there. If they ask questions to you about your current boss or whatever, you say, we get along pretty well. Everybody, hey, if they really push you, you can say, hey, look, everybody's got their ups and downs, but generally speaking, we get along pretty well. I don't have any complaints about them. I don't have any issues with them. It's not really an issue for me. I don't have a problem with them. Right. Anytime they ask you these stupid questions that are like traps, where they say, what's the worst thing you don't like about your current boss? You don't fall for any of those. You don't fall into these traps. You answer and you say, well, actually, nothing really comes to mind, about any kind of major issue I have with them. I really don't have any major issues with them. We get along pretty well. And, I try and do what they request of me as to the best of my ability. And I've never had any real major issues with them. So yeah, that's all I can say. Like you wriggle out of the trap. They're trying to get dirt on you. They're trying to get you to badmouth someone, and you just refuse to do it. Arthur says, hello, just joined the chat. What would you say to someone who has been rejected by entry-level jobs like McDonald's? I'd say you're normal. You really think that no one has ever been rejected by those people before, ever? No, you're absolutely normal. And like all rejection in job search, it has no bearing on you. It has no reflection on you. When you have 800 people apply for a job, one person gets it, 799 don't get it. Is it because the 799 weren't qualified, or there was something wrong with them? No. There's many of those 799 could have easily done that job, and it might have worked out really well for everyone. It's just the luck of the draw. It's more about random chance than it is about anything about you. You know what I mean? That's just how this stuff goes, right? So don't do all kinds of soul searching about it. Now, if you applied for many jobs and you went to 25 job interviews in a row and you got rejected from all of them, you never got a single offer, then maybe let's do some research into perhaps my interviewing technique. I'm going to go see a career coach. We're going to do a pretend job interview. They're going to give me their objective opinion about how I interview, and they're going to give me some advice. It's like, and they're going to be much more objective, and they're going to be familiar with what recruiters are looking for. So, I'm going to do that as sort of a verification, just to make sure that there's nothing weird that I'm doing in interviews that's killing my chances. Same with job applications. You could apply to 1,000 jobs and not get an interview. Anything more than 1,000 jobs, maybe it might be worth some verification. Let's verify. Let's get a career coach or someone. I'm not a career coach, by the way. I'm not plugging myself. I'm just saying I don't do that work, but other people do. And maybe it's worth sort of working like 1 hour with one person and saying, what do you think of my my application, my resume and my job application? It's for this job. What do you think? Am I doing something wrong? Is there any kind of red flags that I'm not realizing or something? And maybe they can help you with that, right? You know what I mean? But until it gets to that point, it's just random chance. It's just everyone has to go through a certain number of no's before they get a yes. That's just how these things go. It's just luck of the draw. Hopefully that makes sense. Curran says, just heard feedback from another interview I wasn't picked for. They thought I was very smart with very sharp answers. By the way, any kind of feedback they give you can ignore it, okay? Like, it's nice if they say positive things, but always remember, take it with a grain of salt. Whatever they say is usually not the truth, right? Whether it's good or bad, okay? They thought I was very smart, very sharp. They chose the person everyone on the team liked. There's good news, though. There's another opening where I would be working with just one of the people on the panel who really liked me, my smarts and my enthusiasm. It seems like my energy would be a good match with her. Okay, well, best of luck, Current. Do your best. Put some effort into it. If it's worth doing right. So put some effort into it and rehearse and bone up for it. But just remember, whichever way it goes, it's more to do with luck. Whatever you want to call it, statistical probability, it's more to do with that than it is to do with anything you're doing, right? You're you. And for the most part, people give the same interview. You have the same experiences, the same resume, same education. For the most part, your interview answers are pretty much the same. whichever job you interview, whichever employer you interview with, right? What's changed is the employer. You go some places, they look at you and they go, no, absolutely not. You go to another place, they go, yes, you're the one. You know, you didn't do anything different. You're just being you. You know, you're doing the best job you can. It's just random chance, right? So the key to success is having a lot of interviews, a lot of leads, and then doing your best for each of those leads, right? Kieran. Yeah, listen, like there's no harm in believing them when they say nice things about you. You know, I mean, that you gotta get through life like that. But all I'm saying is that, recruiters learned a long time ago that you can't be honest. You can't give honest feedback for many, many reasons. You can't do that. Even in some places, like I believe in the United States, it's company policy that you can't give honest reasons why, hiring decisions are made, because companies have been sued in the past. Like, here's the reason why you were rejected, and then the candidate turns around, successfully sues the company. So therefore, companies adopted a different strategy. It's like, okay, now we don't give feedback. Or if we do give feedback, it's so vague that, it has to be useless. Or it's just incorrect, So you can't be sued. Like, you can, but no one's going to sue you and win. You know what I mean? So my point is, it's even official sometimes. But across the board, I don't care what country you're in, recruiters have learned to shut up about the reasons why hiring decisions were made. They even go a step beyond now, where they don't even communicate with you. They ghost you, and part of the reason they do that is because, when you tell people, I'm sorry, we're not going with you. People get angry, they get upset, they threaten people, they threaten the recruiter, they threaten the company, all kinds of emotional kind of outbursts and things, which are understandable. But recruiters just want to shield themselves from that. So that's why they don't get into it with people. They only really continue communicating with the candidates that are still in the running, right? Get in the chat. There's 43 people here. Give me some questions to respond to. That's what I'm here for. See if I can help you out. This drink is flat. This is ginger ale. I'm drinking ginger ale. I've had people ask me if I'm drinking rum and coke or, whiskey or all kinds of things. Like, nope, just ginger ale. Got to keep a clear head. Let's go over to more polls. I prefer to be employed in a formal centralized company culture, or B, an informal decentralized company culture. And that won out. And I would agree with this one. I've worked in both, and small company culture hands down beats big company culture as far as I'm concerned. I've worked for blue chip companies. I hated it. There was a lot of problems with it. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of problems with this too, depending on where you work, but I had good experiences with it. Most people who are employed in your region work in organizations over 500 employees or organizations under 500 employees. And this was my attempt at humor. This is a catch question. People in my region aren't employed. So that got 15%. This does vary depending on where you are. Like, for example, where I am in Canada, in Manitoba, which is a part of Canada, it's this one. 85% of people that have jobs work in small companies, right? Not that you would think that, because you still see all the skyscrapers and everything like that. The big companies are there, right? It's just that they're much more visible. All the smaller employees, they're all hidden away in like industrial parks and things like this. And that is true of a lot of cities, and certainly in North America, and I'm sure in the EU also. Curran T says, flat ginger ale still help and upset stomach. I don't know. Maybe it does. I'm not sure. I don't drink it for that reason, but it's not very strong, put it that way. So it probably does. How do you say this? Salt says, maybe I misunderstood you, but I strongly disagree on the luck part. I mean, social skills, awareness about some chemistry between you and hiring staff. Awesome. Great. Get in the chat. Let me know if you have questions or anything. Let's go back to some of the stuff here. A job interview is really all about how well you fit in, how much value you can bring, attempted humor, your mother, or your skills and qualifications. Now, what people definitely got right here is that it's not about this. That's what the application is about, right? You get the interview because of how qualified you are. They bring in the qualified people and other things like first come, first serve. There's a bit of luck there. How much value can you bring? I mean, it depends on your definition of value, yeah. But this is important, how well you fit in. Now, this is an interesting topic because, you see, it's a very common thing. We know this, that a lot of recruiters or hiring managers, they'll say, it just wasn't a good fit, right? And the problem is like the word fit is kind of like the word overqualified. There's no such thing as being overqualified. It's just a euphemism for the real reason why they rejected you. They don't want to say the real reason. Maybe they're assuming that you will ask for too much money. Maybe they find that you're too old, and they don't want to say you're too old. We're wanting someone younger. So instead they say you're overqualified, right? Which is a stupid idea. So like a fit, you see, this is the other thing. They did a ton of studies in I think it was like between the 60s and the 80s. I mean, I'm sure they've done a ton since, but certainly between the 1960s and 1980s in management science, they did all kinds of studies on this with data and everything. And they concluded that the companies that tend to be successful financially are the ones that have diversity of skill sets, right? And diversity of personalities. Like, diversity is a very political charged word. Usually when they mean it in a political sense, they limit it to things like ethnicity and sexual orientation and, gender and like stuff like that. But I'm talking about the full meaning of the word, which is diversity of skill sets, diversity of personality types, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of age, like just diversity of like many, many variables, right? A lot of things they don't usually talk about. They're certainly not a political issue. And what they found was that the more diverse your business is, all things being equal, you tend to be more successful. You make more money, and that's true. If you're there were some prominent examples in the United States where they had like American companies go to India and try to sell their products in India. I think GE or someone, they tried to set up their appliance business in India or whatever and sell to the Indian market. And they had like all these white people from the US try to sell to Indians from India in India. And it's like they were amazed to find that they weren't very effective. And then they had this absolutely brilliant original idea of hiring Indians from India to sell to Indians in India, and what a shocker. They were so much more effective, you know what I mean? So we've known this for a very long time, right? That, it takes a variety of different people. The problem, of course, is that in order to manage those people, it gets exponentially harder. When you have old people, young people, you have university educated people and, people that don't really have a lot of education, but they got a ton of experience. You got people from all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different personalities, all kinds of different communication styles, different work styles. it becomes much more difficult to manage them because you have to understand them and tailor how you deal with all of them. It's very hard. But what they found was that, if you can do that, it produces much better results. So it's just weird when you come down to job interviews, the thing that recruiters always say, oh, I'm just sorry you weren't the right fit. Meaning, if that does have an actual meaning, the implication is that you weren't exactly like them. The way you talk, your expectations, your communication style, your background, it's like, it's so stupid. Like, this directly contradicts proven business principles that they've demonstrated again and again through big data, and we see it all the time, right? So it really annoys me because usually the people who say these things are like ignorant to that. And it also shows you how it's a euphemism for they just didn't like you for some specific reason, but they don't want to say the reason. Or they don't even know why they're rejecting you. They hired the person they want. And I'm sorry, that you also applied, so we can't hire you both. So I'm sorry, you're not a good fit, You know what I mean? Like that's something else that just gets to me because it's so stupid. It's another lie, as part of this process. And normally that's okay, but the problem is that there's a lot of young people and people that are new to this process that don't understand that, like, they take everything to be the truth. And so they're racking their brains trying to figure out, like, what can I do? It's like, because you're going off this false information. That's why it doesn't add up. Relax, Reflect Mood Song says, I am to meet the hiring manager for a final interview. Any advice? Have you met them once before, twice before? Hiring managers, if they're the hiring manager, they're the boss. So you're going to report to them. That's what the hiring manager is. So, think about it. If you had to hire someone that you had to work with all the time, like a personal assistant or something, what would you care about? Obviously, you want them to be qualified and all that, but beyond that, you want to get along with them. You want to like them. It has to be easy to deal with you, right? The hiring manager has to find it easy to deal with you, easy to talk to you. When they tell you to do something, you just intuitively get what they're saying. Yeah, I know how to do that. I can do that. They don't have to explain it all to the nth degree. You just understand, things like that. That's what they care about. It's different from the recruiter. Recruiter, they don't have to work with you. As soon as you're hired, the recruiter buggers off. You never see them again, right? So, you know what I mean? So that's how that stuff works. Mr. Goodtime says, hello, just joining the live feed. There was a LI connection that I reached out to after finding a position. I don't know what LI is. After finding a position at her global company, she gave me an internal referral and a connection to a recruiter. Okay. And I was immediately rejected. I reached back to double check why, and she was also intrigued to see that I was immediately disqualified because of, who's she? Like, sorry, you lost me somewhere in there. Is that LinkedIn connection that I reached out to after finding a position at her global company? She gave me an internal referral and a connection to a recruiter, and I was immediately rejected. I reached back to double check why. She was also intrigued to see that I was immediately disqualified because I put blank 0 instead of a numerical. So yeah, well, think about this for 1 second. If everybody could just bypass the question by putting 0, you really think they wouldn't have figured that out by now? Yeah. The reason they put that field is to get an answer. If you're going to try and, circumlocute the questions they ask you, they're going to regard that as like a hostile kind of thing, and they're going to be annoyed and they're going to reject you for it. That's the problem. Okay, so if it seems like what you're asking is, if I'm understanding this correctly, is how to answer the salary question when it's asked on a form. Okay. I did a video last week. Every second comment I got was, I said, like, how to answer in a job interview when they say, like, what is your current salary, right? So they could either ask you that, or they could say, what are your salary expectations? They could ask both of those in a form where you have a field. You can't put words. You can't skip the question. You can't put a range. You have to put a single number, right? Now, if you put 0, a lot of the times that's either not allowed or they'll reject you outright because of that. If you put a ridiculously low number like $1 or something, like one currency, whatever currency you're in, same effect. That's a fail. That'll instantly, automatically disqualify you. Usually, this goes through some kind of ATS, applicant tracking system, so it does it automatically. It's not anything the person does. It's just the computer reads the number, and unless it's between a certain range, it'll disqualify it, right? So the problem is, it's like, you don't know what their range is, right? It's a guessing game. And so anyway, listen, long story short, this is what I recommend. For the question, what is your current salary? I recommend you don't answer. If you do answer, you answer it the same way as your salary expectations, okay? And if they ask salary expectations and they have a field, what you do is you put the lowest number you would ever possibly accept if everything you don't know about the job turns out to be best case scenario. So, for example, these questions are stupid because you don't even know things like the benefits, right? In order for you to know what salary you would want, wouldn't it be kind of helpful to know what the benefit package is? Or how many vacation days you get per year? Or is it a remote job? Or is it shift work? Or do you get a company car? Is it 50% travel required? Or like, you know what I mean? These are kind of important things. Do you have to work all statutory holidays? Is it mandatory? Because it's like a 24/7, 365 operation. You know, hello, those things are pretty damn important. You know, do you have to relocate for it? There's so many things that you don't know about the job that they usually haven't put on the job posting, right? So it's ridiculous that they would say, okay, you have to put in your salary expectations here and you have to stick to it, right? It's retarded. So what I say is, like, all those things that they haven't told you, just assume they're all like best case scenario, you know? It's an incredibly amazing benefit package, right? You got 6 weeks vacation a year on top of 20 sick days. You know, it's not shift work. It's fully remote, just no travel. All your holidays are off and paid. You know what I mean? Just assume the best and then put what amount of money you would need to take that job, the lowest amount. It would be a pretty low number, right? It's not going to be 0. It's not going to be 1. It's going to be somewhere pretty low, right? Now, the idea is that as you learn more about the job, presumably if you come in for an interview, you can ask them, like, so is this a remote job, or is it 50% remote, or, you know, how many vacation days? You know, like, you might be able to ask stuff like that. And as you learn more about it, you can revise your number upwards. You know what I mean? That's how this stuff works. But you can't just put 0 or 1. Usually you can. Sometimes you can, but you run the risk of it automatically rejecting you. Relax Reflect says, no, I had a Zoom meeting. Okay, so that was I'm in the hiring manager. Okay, so you haven't met the hiring manager before. I had a Zoom meeting. Okay, so you did do a Zoom meeting with them. So I don't know if you've seen them or anything like that. Okay, so I think I answered all that stuff, didn't I? If anyone has any more questions, if I didn't answer your questions, just let me know and I'll be happy to do it. Pearl says, do you have advice for getting chosen for a job? Yeah, that's the whole point of my channel, really. I'm good at interviews and tailor my cover letters, but I usually get rejected or ghosted. Another question. After the interviewer emailed saying they're going to reach out to all candidates next week. Is that a good or bad sign? Who knows, Pearl? That could go both ways. There's no way to tell. Don't worry about it. Listen, if they reach out to you, great. If they don't, oh well. There's nothing. You have no control of what they do. All you can do is do your best. You can, when you submit an application, do it the best you can. When you go down for an interview, prepare the most you can. That's all you can do. These people, they're doing their own thing. It really depends on what they happen to be looking for. Some people are looking for crazy things. Some people are looking for people they can exploit, right? You have no control. Just go down there, do your best. That's all you can. Okay? Like Pearl says, do you have any advice for getting chosen for a job? I mean, yes, I do, but it involves details. Just, apply for as many jobs as you possibly can. If you're applying to posted jobs and that's the game you're playing, apply for as many as you can. Custom tailor your resume and your application, obviously, to every job that you apply for. Don't just use one resume that you send out to every job you apply for. It'll be gloriously ineffective at getting you interviews. Now, if you don't believe me, do some research on that. See what other people are saying. If you don't believe them, go out and try it. See what the results you get. But if you're wondering why it's maybe not working for you and you're not customizing your resume, try customizing your resume. I recommend, like most people, you use some AI tool to help you with it. It does the heavy lifting, but you're in command of the process. And you always proofread what you do before you send it off. Okay? And then you'll get more interviews. Now, if you're getting a lot of interviews, but you're never getting hired, then work on your interviewing technique. They tend to hire the person they like the most. It's stupid, but it's true. Every single person they're talking to is qualified for the job. Those are the only people they bring in for interviews, people who are qualified, right? So just being qualified doesn't mean that they're going to give you the job. You have to be qualified and be someone they want to work with. If you're qualified, but you go down there and you get upset with everything they say, and you're acting very arrogant, and they're not going to hire. It doesn't matter how qualified you are; they're never going to hire you. Unless they happen to be a group full of psychopaths that don't mind insufferable people. It's kind of a hobby of theirs to hang out with them. You know what I mean? So you have to be the most likable person. You do that by being friendly, having some basic social skills. You can work on that. There's a lot of resources that there are to work on that. To have a certain amount of confidence. Confidence comes from believing that you're good at interviewing. And you get good at interviewing by practice. It's like anything else in life. Practice makes perfect. So you do lots and lots of practice. And that's how you get good at interviews like anything else. Now, you can practice, the cheap version of this is to practice with a friend or family member. Okay? Just grab a friend or family member you have just loafing around and get them to do pretend job interviews with you. They'll be the interviewer and they interview you. You can give them a list of questions or get them to make up their own questions. And then you just do this over and over and over again. And if you do, say, 3 or 4 of those a day for 2 weeks, that's around maybe 40 interviews. That's good preparation. You go down to a job interview after doing 40 mock interviews, you'll do noticeably better and you'll feel noticeably more confident and comfortable doing it. Okay? If it feels weird doing a pretend interview with a friend or family member, that's good because that simulates what the real thing is going to feel like, right? Okay? That's how you get good at interviewing. So you don't make all your rookie mistakes at the real job interview where you lose the job. You make all your rookie mistakes at home, right? Okay, and then if you want to go the extra yard, learn about the hidden job market. That's where 80% of the jobs are. They're not posted. You access them via networking type activities, right? And that's like a whole collection of different things. Some things that pretty much only extroverts really can tolerate doing, but there's a lot of things in there that introverts can kick ass that's not a problem for introverts to do. If you don't know anyone, that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of things you can do. You can arrive new in a city and get a job on the hidden job market by doing direct outreach and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things to learn, and you would do all of this stuff to really get good at it, depending on what particular aspect you want to focus on. So that was for Pearl Escobar. Pearl says, I'm getting discouraged. I have a master's and good experience. I'm super organized and prepared. Irrelevant, Pearl. You can have 5 PhDs and not get hired. It's not about your qualifications. That's not what it's about. Just because you're qualified to do something doesn't mean that someone's going to come along and offer you a job for it. That's not how it works. There are many people that are qualified to do things, more people than there are jobs. Okay? So just expecting, oh yeah, I'm qualified, so where's my job offer? Doesn't work like that. You have to go out and find the opportunities, and you have to be more than just qualified. You have to be the person they would love to work with. I know it's stupid. I know it's aggravating, but that's just the way it is. That's how humans behave, Now, you say, I do great at interviews. They love me, but I hardly get selected. Okay, well, if you're still without a job, I would say lately you're not being selected. That's the assumption I'm making. Now, it may feel good for you. You may walk out of the interview feeling like, yeah, I kicked ass and it went really well. But if they don't select you, then the reality is that it didn't go well for them, right? They're probably being very polite about it and they're being very professional about it, but somebody presumably did better than you, and you're never the one that's on the top of the heap. So you still need to work on your interview technique despite how good you feel when you come out of there. Because if you didn't get selected, it suggests that you didn't beat all your competitors, right? I'm sure you're not doing bad, but you've got to be better. You've got to be even better, right? Now, if it's like 1 or 2 interviews, hey, it's all a crapshoot, right? It's all based on random chance. But if this keeps happening over time, you go to 10 interviews, 20 interviews, 30 interviews, you're never selected. It's like they're usually, the average number of people they're interviewing is about 6. For some jobs, it's more. For some jobs, it's less. But usually the average is around 6. So that suggests that, if you're 1 out of 6, that's like a throw of the dice, right? Like a die. It's got 6 sides, right? So if you need to roll a 2, how many throws do you need to do before it comes up 2, right? Do you think you would get a 2 after 30 attempts? Probably. So sometime before then, get some assistance in working on your interviewing technique. Okay, you could do it yourself, or you could do it with a career coach. I'm not a career coach. I'm not talking about me, but a lot of other people are career coaches. They can help you. Sometimes it helps just getting an objective opinion. Okay, so avail yourself of that if you're doing like 30 interviews without a single offer. That's what I would say. Okay, Joshua says, any advice on a good way to respond to questions in an interview? Yes. My whole channel is based on that, so maybe go and watch some of my videos. People say stay calm as opposed to what? Panicking? Yeah, that's probably not good. Or getting violent. That probably isn't good either. People say stay calm. Any way to navigate answering questions required thinking on your feet, especially when you don't have experience to draw from. I'm terrible at thinking on my feet. Most people are. Usually, you don't have to think on your feet. You just go in there prepared, right? If you feel like, oh no, I needed to think on my feet. No, it was what's actually going on is that you weren't prepared because you could have anticipated them asking that question or something similar to it, in which case you would have prepared, you'd have understood what your position was and what your answer was going to be before you went in there, and you just had to say it. Okay? Because being prepared also involves having like fallback answers, right? You know what I mean? Like when you walk in the room, before you walk in the room, you think, okay, when this is over, I want to make sure that I have told them about this, and I've told them about this, and I haven't revealed this, and I haven't revealed that. Right? Like that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to mention this, and not talk about this or this. So if they steer the discussion towards this or this, I redirect it to something else. I'm not going into that. Right? I don't care what they ask me about or how much they probe. I'm not getting into this. I'm not disclosing my current salary. I'm not talking about my weaknesses. I'm not talking about, bad incidents from my past where I got fired or whatever, But I am going to mention that, the top 5 requirements they listed, they want these skills, this experience, this education, and whatnot. I'm going to make sure that I mention that each of those more than once. So they say something like, what are your strengths? And I say, well, my number one strength is that I have this experience and that I have these skills, right? I want you to get that. That's what I'm here to do. So it's a matter of preparation. So that's to Joshua. And yes, stay calm. Don't get agitated. Don't get all excitable in the job interview. You could get all excitable and start karate kicking people. It's probably not a good thing to do. Sarah Bell says, what if you're not getting any responses on LinkedIn? Well, it depends on what you're doing. If you're going about things the wrong way, then it's kind of expected. If you're doing everything right, then I would suggest that you're not, you haven't sort of talked to enough people yet. Remember, the biggest factor in all of this is random chance. You know what I mean? So like I wouldn't do a thing where I talk to one person and then just stop and just wait for their response. And I wait 3, 4, 5 weeks for the response before I do anything else. It's like, no, don't talk to one person, talk to 50. Put out like, hello, I'm here. This is what I do really well. If you're looking for someone like this, let me know. I'd love to work for you. That kind of thing. Most people are not going to respond to that. But just serendipitously, it'll land in the lap of a hiring manager that just happens to need to hire someone like you right now. Most people, if you're going to hiring managers of companies that employ people like you, the odds are is that they're not looking to hire someone like you right this second, so they probably won't respond. But 5% of the time, random chance, you will find that person, Okay, so work on your technique. And then if you do have the right technique, you're going to the right person, you're saying the right thing over the right channel, right? That all checks out. If that's what you're doing, then you just need to go to more people, right? Don't go to like 2 people or something. Sarah Bell says, should you try to get a hiring manager or recruiter email and communicate that way? You can do anything you want. I wouldn't recommend that. No. First of all, I would not contact recruiters. I think that's a total waste of time. You contact the recruiter when you apply for the job anyway, so whatever. I would go to, the way I've done stuff is you go to the hiring manager under certain circumstances, right? When they don't have a job posted, then you go to the hiring manager. Anyway, it's complicated. It's hard to explain this stuff in 2 minutes. There's a lot of principles here. If you want to learn all that from me, check out that course. I built a consulting business by getting on LinkedIn. I did nothing but informational interviews with tons of CEOs of companies in my hometown. I didn't know them. They didn't know me. But a lot of them ended up being my consulting clients, from the informational interview. So that's how I did it. In order to set those up, I went through LinkedIn. If you want to see what I did, how I did that, I put some links to one video in particular that's in the description box. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Okay, so you can find the link to that video in the description box. If you're curious to see what that looks like, how that works, what I did, check that out. Okay. Guido says, if you apply for jobs in IT right now, your qualification and interview performance can be good and you may still get rejected. Yeah. Hello. That's how the world works, because so many candidates are available at certain fields. Yeah, IT is a boom-bust industry. This is the thing. I can't tell you how many arrogant IT people, like students, computer science students, because I do stuff in the world of entrepreneurship. I advise startups and all this kind of stuff. And, there are periods where, like, you could not find a computer science student that, you could like pay and give them a job in a startup, because they were all immediately being snapped up by big companies and paying them like extravagant compensation packages, and then you get the arrogance of these people saying, oh, well, are you having trouble finding a job? Well, you need to have gone into IT. Haha. Like me, I'm so smart. And then 2 years later, they're all out of work because it's like a boom bust kind of thing. Just like we're experiencing now with a little bit of the AI boom that turned into the AI bust at the moment. If you're in IT, don't worry, it's going to come back. It goes in cycles. You know what I mean? But like the thing with a lot of people in IT, I studied electrical engineering. It's not computer engineering, but it's very close. And, the thing about all these fields is that you get people that are just very sharp with a lot of technical skills. But on average, their social skills are non-existent. That's why they're so insufferable to deal with as a group. And that's why if you work in IT, especially like whether you're a systems admin or you're a developer or whatever, like on whichever side of the coin there you're working, if you can tack on some really good social skills to go along with your fierce technical skills, you can rule that business. The thing that holds IT people back in general are their social skills. They don't realize it. It's amazing the blind spot they have for that. They don't realize it because they don't respect it. Therefore, they don't value it. Therefore, they don't work on it. So, yeah. Yeah. So, like, welcome to the world. There's a lot of qualified people that can't get jobs, and it's not a question of are you qualified, meaning that if you are qualified, you will get a job. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of qualified people they could pick, right? The question is, the decision they're making when they pick between candidates is, would I rather work with this person or that person? Now, that person came to the interview. They were argumentative. They were insufferable. They got offended by every second thing I said, which wasn't offensive. They were just taking it wrong. It was painful. I really found that interaction with them very unpleasant, And that's like a free sample of what it's going to be like to work with them. Because if that's how they are in the job interview, it's going to be way worse dealing with them like when they're employed. When they've got the job and now you got to deal with them just, in the workplace, right? Whereas this person over here, not only were they qualified, they're qualified about the same as the other person, somewhere similar, but I really enjoyed the interaction. They were easy to talk to. We got along really well. They have a sense of humor. We seem to click as people. It seems like we could work together really well. You know, they were very agreeable, but they did kind of correct me on a couple of things. And when they corrected me, it didn't feel like, you know, it didn't feel bad. It felt like, you know, they did it in a very pleasant way that, you know, I didn't feel offended or challenged. That what they said made perfect sense, and I was happy to go along with it. So yeah, you know, so I'd rather work with that person. So that's the person I pick. You know, don't be fooled by the fact that when you go down to a job interview, they ask you about technical things. That's not why. That's not what they're assessing you on. I don't care what the structure of the interview is. That's not what they're assessing you on. Or they wouldn't have invited you down for an interview. They'd have sent you a questionnaire, got you to fill out the questions remotely. Like, why engage in this if it doesn't have to be like in real time? You know what I mean? If they just wanted to see if you could answer a technical question, they would have done that on a web form on a website with a timer. You know, that would have been much more efficient for them. But no, they had to sit with you in real time to do this. Why do you think that is? It's because it really isn't about the technical questions. It's about assessing who you are as a person, you know? And if you feel that, like, you know, the technical questions really were the point, then what the hell is the point of getting a qualification if all they're going to do is they're going to like reevaluate you from scratch anyway in the job interview, you know? Then the qualifications don't matter. Sometimes we get that, and that does happen. But that's not the majority situation. Usually, it's that's a wild exception. Thank you, Pearl. Guido says, like you said, many people get into it for the boom, not for the passion or for the field. If you put bad social skills on top, you are in a tough spot right now. Yeah, the problem is that, you know, what do they do when they've hired, like, you know, middle managers and stuff that themselves don't have great social skills? Then those are the people hiring. Then it gets even more convoluted, right? Socrates, G, greetings from Italy. I'm a very lovely person. Any advice for a 60-year-old? They are saying I'm too old. You're not too old. You're never too old. I don't care if you're 140, you're not too old, you know? You're as young as you feel, you know? It's almost like, you know, you're never too fat. That's what I think I'm trying to prove to myself. But no, you're not too old. Listen, you want to go down for a job and, you know, where being 60 is not going to be a problem, go and interview with a 60-year-old, okay? This is another reason, like, once again, you know, I'm pushing people towards the hidden job market. Go target hiring managers and executives and things on LinkedIn where you can see them. You can tell they're not 21. They look like they're 60. They got gray hair. They're bald. What little hair remains is in a ring and it's white, you know? They're probably not 21 if they look like that. You go talk to them, they won't mind the fact that you're 60. I can tell you that much. Same thing would go if you're 21 and you're worried that people aren't taking you seriously because you're so young. Go interview with a young-looking person, like who's probably closer to 21 themselves. You know what I mean? Maybe they're 25. They're not going to beat up on you for being 21. You know? So keep rocking 60, okay? Socrate G, you're doing fine. Curran T says, yeah, I had that happen to me too. Was told off by a classmate for not getting into IT and how he was going to make millions of dollars before he was 30. Didn't work out for him that way. Yeah, you know, people have also heard that from people in finance too. At various periods over the last 100 years, you know? Okay, there is no money before, but more into doing things good. Those are wish and is not a job. Okay. Cool. If you want to learn how this stuff works, check out that course. That's all my advice all in one place. There's a link to that in the description box below. If you're running into problems, that can help you out. It can also teach you about the hidden job market, what you can do to access where 80% of the jobs are. You know, I got to keep saying this because most people don't realize this. All the jobs that you see posted, like all the posted jobs, like on Indeed and LinkedIn and every other website, ZipRecruiter, like everywhere they're posted, that's 20% of the jobs that are out there, right? That's you're seeing 20% of what's there. The other 80 are there, but they're hidden. That means they're there. They're just not posted, right? Now you can get those jobs. Okay, you can't do an internet search and discover them that way. You have to discover it through other means. And usually it's going to be some form of networking to discover those. But that's where 80% of the jobs are. That's where all the good jobs are. And the other thing is that when you apply for the posted jobs online, you're going in with like 600, 800 other candidates. The hidden jobs, you're going in with maybe 2 other candidates if you're lucky. So there's substantially less competition for them. The other statistic that I had heard years ago was that 80% of the candidates are applying for the posted jobs. So like 80% of the candidates are applying for those 20% of the jobs. So it's extremely competitive. So learn about the hidden job market. Usually, on average, people learn about this later on in their careers. But just to demonstrate it to you, you probably have a family member, a friend or a family member that got their job by not applying cold to a company through a job ad. Instead, they had a friend of a friend, you know, who put in a good word for them and said, "Oh, that we're actually hiring over here. Are you interested?" And the other person said, "Sure, yeah, I'm interested." And they're like, "Okay, I can." You're not going to be hired because of your connection, but they'll get the employer to take a good look at you, right? You get hired on your own merits, but they put your name forward. They say, "Oh, I've worked with that person. You should check them out." Right? That's the hidden job market right there. Now, if you know somebody, yeah, great. That's a great way to hire it. But most people, they tap the hidden job market. They don't know anyone. You reach out to the employers, right? And these days, with things like Google Maps and LinkedIn, it's never been easier to do this. So I show you how to do that in that course. I basically show you the method I use to build my consulting business. If you want to see a free version of what that kind of looks like, check out the video that's also posted in the description box below. It's called How Successful People Get Jobs. Watch that video. It shows you what it looks like. Age is only a number, but what we wish over currency or wealth. Okay. I'm having problems understanding the grammar for HVN. I read how Naruto, a Japanese comic, created. Okay, I have no idea what that is. A from LA says, "I love that tip for the 60-year-old. I'm turning 58 next week. However, even people my age ask my age because they think I'm at least 10 years younger. Good stuff." Yeah, well, you got to take that as a compliment, right? A from LA. That's a good thing. It's better than the opposite, you know, it's as opposed to the alternative. They just assume you're like 110 years old and they don't need to ask, right? That would be worse. Relax, Reflect, Mood Song says, "How do we contact you for the hidden? How do you contact me for the hidden job market? You don't contact me. Just learn about the hidden job market is what I was trying to say. If you're wondering where all my teaching is about that, it's in that course. So check that out if you want to learn that stuff. I mean, I've done videos on bits of it over the years. You could check out what I have on my channel. But yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, there's 31 people here. It's been an hour and a half. Check out my courses there. This is the one that I think everyone's going to be interested in. If you're looking to climb the ladder, you're looking to get a promotion, check out that one too. That's on improving your communication skills. It's mainly a writing course, you know. It's like I got some individual writing out, you know, a bastardized version of the 10 Commandments or something in the chat. So I don't know what they're trying to prove by doing that, but it takes all kinds, right? This world is a rich tapestry of different individuals with all kinds of different perspectives. So it's good. Anyway, I will be back on Friday with more live streams. So if you need more help or whatever, you got more questions, come back on Friday. And until then, I will see you guys. Always remember, you're awesome. Okay. You know, I wish you all the best of luck in this process. It's a frustrating time. It's a challenging time for people that are between jobs. It always is. These times are never easy. But you know what? Like I always say, I mean, it is temporary. It doesn't feel temporary, but it is. And you're going to be just fine. Okay. And I mean that. If you got any questions, I'm here Monday, Wednesday, Friday with live streams. I got a lot of videos on my channel that can help you with various things. So check those out. And I will see you soon. Take care.